The jet was falling. Nia Carter pressed her face against the window and watched the forest rush up to meet them like a green fist. Her boss, the man who'd never learned her name in 3 years, was screaming into a dead radio. In 60 seconds, they would crash. In 2 weeks, she would save his life. In 3, he would destroy his empire to keep her. But right now, she was just a single mother about to die in the sky, wondering if her daughter would remember her voice. If you're watching, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Nia Carter had learned to make herself invisible. At 28, she'd perfected the art of existing in corporate spaces without taking up room. Eyes down in elevators, voice soft in meetings, presence carefully managed to avoid the kind of attention that reminded people she didn't belong. She was beautiful in a way that made men stare and women assess. Her dark skin smooth as riverstone, her natural hair twisted into a neat bun that said professional without saying threatening. She'd learned that balance young. Had to. The private jet's leather seat was butter soft beneath her, the kind of luxury she touched but never owned. She kept her laptop balanced on the fold-down tray, fingers flying across the quarterly report that Graham Whitmore, her boss, her CEO, the man who signed her barely living wage, had demanded before takeoff. The cabin hummed with money, polished wood panels, ambient lighting the color of champagne, air that smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement. Graham sat 8 feet away and might as well have been on another planet. He hadn't looked at her once since they boarded in Seattle, hadn't acknowledged her presence beyond the clipped email that morning. Bring the Henderson file. We'll work in transit. No please. No thank you. Just the assumption that she'd drop everything, rearrange her daughter's pickup, beg her neighbor for another favor, sprint to the airport on 90 minutes' notice, because he'd decided her time was his. She was used to it. Carter, his voice cut through the engine noise, sharp as a blade. Nia's shoulders tensed before she could stop them. She looked up. Graham Whitmore was 42 and looked like old money given human form, sharp jaw, ice blue eyes, dark hair going silver at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished instead of old. He wore his power like tailored suits, perfectly, constantly, without apology. 3 years she'd worked in his shadow, and he'd never once asked about her life, never noticed when she came to work on 3 hours of sleep because Zara had been sick, never saw the second-hand clothes she rotated carefully to look like a wardrobe. Yes, Mr. Whitmore? The projections. Where are we on market penetration in the Southwest region? She rattled off the numbers without checking her notes. She knew them cold, had spent the weekend running scenarios while Zara colored at the kitchen table. 17% growth quarter over quarter. If we maintain current momentum, we'll hit 22 by fiscal year end. He nodded once, already looking back at his own screen. Dismissed. Nia returned to her laptop, jaw tight. This was her life. This was the price of the paycheck that kept Zara fed and the rent paid and the lights on. She could be invisible for 40 hours a week. She'd been invisible her whole life. The turbulence started small. A shudder in the cabin. The flight attendant, Mark, young and professionally pleasant, paused in the aisle, one hand braced against the galley wall. The seatbelt sign chimed on. Just some chop, folks, the pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. We're going to climb to avoid the worst of it. Graham didn't look up from his tablet. Nia saved her work and closed the laptop. Something cold was forming in her stomach, the same instinct that used to wake her when Zara was sick before she cried. She gripped the armrests. The jet dropped. Not turbulence. Not chop. A sickening lurch like the floor had been yanked out from under them. Nia's stomach rose into her throat. Her laptop flew off the tray and cracked against the opposite wall. Mark stumbled, grabbed for a seat, missed. What the hell? Graham's voice, for the first time ever, uncertain. The cabin tilted. Warning lights erupted across the cockpit panel. Nia could see them flashing through the open door, red and orange painting the pilots' faces in panic. The engine noise changed, a grinding shriek that sounded like metal eating itself. This is your captain. The voice was tight, controlled the way people got when they were screaming inside. We've lost the port engine. We're going to make an emergency descent. Brace positions now. The world tilted 45 degrees. Nia slammed against the window. Her head cracked against the glass and stars exploded across her vision. Somewhere Mark was shouting instructions, but the words were garbled by the screaming alarm and the horrible wrongness of gravity pulling sideways. She tried to remember the safety briefing. Head down, hands locked, brace, 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 but her body wouldn't cooperate. Through the window she could see it now. Trees, an ocean of them, stretching to every horizon, green and dense and utterly empty of roads or towns or any sign of human life. They were falling toward it like a stone. "Carter!" Graham's hand locked around her wrist. He'd crossed the tilted cabin somehow, moving against the angle like he could fight physics through sheer will. His face was white, eyes wide with something she'd never seen there before. Fear. "Buckle in." He shoved her toward her seat, and for once, she didn't resent his hands on her. She fumbled for the belt, fingers numb and stupid with terror. Graham dropped into the seat beside her, not his seat, the one assigned and maintained at careful distance, but right next to her, and yanked his own belt tight. The jet was screaming now, the whole frame shaking like it would rip apart. Outside the window, the trees were individual now, close enough to see branches, close enough to count seconds until impact. "Oh, God," Nia heard herself whisper. "Zara." Her daughter's face filled her mind. 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, braids Nia had done that morning because Zara wanted to look like a warrior princess. Who would pick her up from school? Who would tell her that mommy loved her, that she'd fought to come home, that every single thing Nia had ever done had been to give her baby girl a better life than this? The world exploded. Metal screaming, glass shattering. The sensation of being thrown through space like a rag doll. Nia's head snapped forward and back, the seatbelt cutting into her chest hard enough to crack ribs. Something hot sprayed across her face. Blood. Fuel, she couldn't tell. And the cabin filled with smoke that tasted like burning plastic and jet fuel and death. Then darkness. Silence. The peculiar stillness of catastrophe. What? Nia woke to pain. It started in her ribs, sharp, ice-pick stabs with each breath, and radiated outward. Her head throbbed. Her wrists ached. When she tried to open her eyes, the left one wouldn't cooperate, swollen shut. The right eye showed her chaos. The jet's cabin was destroyed. The elegant interior had been shredded, seats torn from their moorings, panels hanging at wrong angles. A tree branch, thick as her torso, had punched through where the cockpit door used to be. Smoke drifted lazy and toxic through shafts of sunlight that came through cracks in the fuselage. She was still strapped into her seat, tilted at a 40-degree angle. Alive. The realization hit her like electricity. She was alive. "Mark?" Her voice came out ragged, throat raw from smoke. "Mark, can you hear me?" Silence. No response from the flight attendant. No sound from the cockpit. Terror spiked through her chest. "Mr. Whitmore?" A groan. Movement in the seat beside her. Graham Whitmore was alive, but barely looked it. Blood sheeted down the left side of his face from a gash near his hairline. His expensive suit was torn, one sleeve shredded to reveal a forearm already purpling with bruises, but his eyes were open, aware. "Carter." He said her name like he was testing to see if language still worked. "You're bleeding." "So are you." He reached up with shaking hands and unbuckled his seatbelt. Nearly fell as the angle shifted, caught himself against her seat. Up close she could see the shock in his eyes, the way his pupils were blown wide and his breathing too fast. "We have to get out." His voice was steady despite the shaking hands. CEO voice, the one that brooked no argument. "Fuel leak. Smell it?" Nia could, sharp and chemical beneath the smoke. She fumbled with her own buckle, hissed as the movement sent pain lancing through her ribs. Graham's hands covered hers, the first time he'd ever touched her except to shove her into the seat, and clicked the release. She half fell into his arms. For a moment they were pressed together, his heart hammering against her cheek, both of them trembling and alive and stinking of jet fuel. Then he set her on her feet. "Can you walk?" Nia tested her weight. Her left ankle screamed protest, but held. "Yes." "The emergency exit. There." He pointed to a panel that had been blown partially open, daylight streaming through the gap. "Go." She wanted to argue, to check the cockpit, to search for Mark. But the fuel smell was getting stronger, and somewhere in the wreckage something was sparking. She limped toward the exit. The gap was narrow. She had to turn sideways, squeeze through metal that tore at her clothes and skin. Then she was falling, only a few feet, but she wasn't ready for it, and hit the ground hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. Forest floor, soft with moss and pine needles, the smell of earth and green things and crushed vegetation where the jet had carved a scar through the trees. She rolled onto her back, gasping, staring up through a canopy so thick it turned the sky into fragments. Graham landed beside her a moment later, more controlled but still graceless. He'd grabbed something, she saw it clutched in his hand, the emergency survival pack from beneath one of the seats. For a long moment, they just lay there, two broken people in business casual, breathing the clean air of a forest that had almost become their grave. "We should move away from the wreckage," Graham said finally, "in case it ignites." Nia pushed herself up. Every muscle screamed. Her ribs were definitely cracked, maybe broken. The cut over her eye was still bleeding, dripping hot down her cheek. But she could stand. She could walk. They stumbled away from the jet, putting distance between themselves and the fuel-soaked metal. 50 yards. 100. Graham kept glancing back, watching for flames that didn't come. Finally, he stopped at a small clearing where a fallen log offered somewhere to sit. Nia collapsed onto it. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving her shaky and cold despite the warm air. She pressed her hand to her ribs and tried to breathe shallow. Graham opened the survival pack with methodical focus, laying out the contents like he was in a boardroom instead of a wilderness. Mylar blankets, water purification tablets, a basic first aid kit, waterproof matches, a compass, a small knife. "No satellite phone," he said quietly. "No flares. Mark must have had them in the galley." The implication hung between them. Mark, who hadn't answered when she called. Mark, who was still in the wreckage, or what was left of it. "The pilots?" Nia asked, though she already knew. Graham's jaw tightened. The tree went through the cockpit. They didn't suffer. 3 people. Dead in seconds. While she and Graham, pressed together in the back of the cabin, had somehow survived. The unfairness of it was crushing. "We need to treat the wounds." Graham pulled out the first aid kit, his hands steadier now that he had a task. "You first. That cuts deep. You're bleeding worse." "Head wounds bleed a lot. Looks worse than it is. Let me see your eye." She let him touch her face. What choice did she have? His fingers surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the cut with an antiseptic wipe. It stung like fire, but she bit down on the inside of her cheek and didn't make a sound. He worked with the focused precision she'd seen him bring to spreadsheets and quarterly reports, taping a bandage across her eyebrow with careful attention. "Ribs?" he asked. "Bruised, maybe cracked. I can breathe, so probably not punctured." He nodded, accepting her self-diagnosis. Then he handed her a wipe. "Your turn." She cleaned the gash on his forehead. The bleeding had slowed, but the wound was deep, would probably scar. She worked as carefully as he had, aware of how strange this was. Her hands on his skin, his eyes watching her face, the distance between them collapsed by catastrophe. "Thank you," he said when she finished. She blinked. In 3 years, she'd never heard him say those words to her. "We should assess our situation," Graham continued, shifting back into the role he knew. Executive, problem solver, the man in control even when the world had just tried to kill them. "We're alive. We have basic supplies. The jet's transponder should be broadcasting our position." "Should be," Nia echoed. "Search and rescue will be looking. They knew our flight path." "How long?" He hesitated. "Depends on the weather. The terrain could be hours. Could be days." The forest pressed in around them, vast and indifferent. Nia had lived in cities her whole life. Atlanta, then Seattle. Places where you were never more than blocks from people and help and civilization. This silence was alien, absolute. No traffic sounds, no sirens, no human noise at all. Just wind in the trees and the distant call of birds. "We need water," she said, "and shelter." Graham looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like respect flicker in those ice-blue eyes. "You know survival training. My grandmother raised me until I was 12. She grew up in rural Georgia, taught me things. How to find water, which plants are edible, how to read weather." Nia met his gaze. "I'm not useless, Mr. Whitmore." "I never said you were." You never said anything to me? Period. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. 3 years of swallowed resentment suddenly freed by the fact that they might die out here. Graham's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Fair enough. He stood, testing his own injuries with the same clinical assessment she'd used. We need to find water before dark. You lead. I'll follow. It was the first time he'd ever deferred to her judgment. Nia pushed herself up, ignoring the protest of her ribs. The sun was still high, which gave them maybe 4 hours of daylight. Not much, but enough to find a water source if they were lucky. She closed her eyes, listening the way Grandma Evelyn had taught her. Filtered out the wind, the birdsong, her own breathing. Searched for the sound of running water, there, faint but real. The whisper of a stream, maybe a quarter-mile downslope. This way, this... She started walking, and behind her Graham Whitmore, billionaire CEO, the man who'd made her feel invisible, followed without argument. The stream was narrow but clear, running over stones worn smooth by time. Nia knelt at the edge, careful of her ribs, and cupped water to her mouth. It was cold, clean, tasted like minerals and earth. She drank until her throat stopped burning. Graham filled one of the water bottles from the survival pack, added a purification tablet with the careful precision he brought to everything. We should stay near the water, build camp here. Not right on the bank, Nia corrected. Animals use this for drinking. We don't want to block their path or put ourselves in the middle of predator territory. He looked at her for a long moment. 20 yards back then. High ground. They found a spot where the land rose slightly, backed by a formation of boulders that would shelter them from wind. Graham set down the survival pack and looked around like he was assessing a business acquisition. We need fire, he said. Shelter. A signal for rescue. Fire first, Nia agreed. It'll be cold tonight. She'd expected him to struggle with it, this man whose hands had never done anything more manual than sign contracts. But Graham moved through the forest gathering wood with surprising efficiency. Dry twigs for tinder, larger branches for fuel, all of it sorted into neat piles. He'd rolled up his torn sleeves, and she could see the corporate softness of him was underlaid with lean muscle, the physique of someone who hit the gym at 5 a.m. before the markets opened. He built the fire structure with the same methodical focus he'd used on her injuries. Tinder nest, kindling teepee, fuel arranged for airflow. Then he pulled out the waterproof matches. The first match went out. The second caught, and he shielded it with his hands, feeding the tiny flame with careful breaths until it caught the tinder. Smoke curled up, then real fire. Nia found herself watching him with something like surprise. This wasn't the distant CEO who'd never learned her name. This was someone competent, capable, stripped of the corporate armor, and revealed as fundamentally useful. You've done this before, she said. Summer camp, long time ago. He sat back on his heels watching the fire grow. My father sent me to learn discipline. I learned how to not freeze to death instead. It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her. We need shelter, Nia said, because the moment felt too intimate and they were still just boss and employee stranded in the wilderness. Something to keep the wind off. They worked together as the afternoon faded. Nia directed, Graham executed. They built a lean-to using branches and pine boughs propped against the boulders for stability. It was crude but functional, large enough for both of them to fit inside, positioned to reflect the fire's heat. By the time darkness fell, they had something resembling a camp. Fire crackling, shelter built, water nearby. The basics of survival. They sat on opposite sides of the fire, the space between them an invisible line they both acknowledged. Nia wrapped herself in one of the mylar blankets, its crinkle loud in the mountain silence. Her ribs ached with each breath, her head pounded, but she was alive. Graham stared into the flames, his profile carved in shadow and light. The blood was dried on his face now, the bandage white against his skin. He looked older somehow, less untouchable. Your daughter, he said suddenly. Zara. She's 7, right? Nia went still. How did you know her name? You keep a picture on your desk, I've seen it. You've never mentioned it. I notice more than you think, Carter. He looked at her then, and the firelight made his eyes less ice, more ocean. Who picks her up when you work late? My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She watches her sometimes when I... Nia's throat closed. Mrs. Chen would have picked Zara up from school today, would be wondering why Nia hadn't come home, would probably call eventually when tomorrow came and went. But how long before anyone knew to look for them here? She'll be okay, Graham said with a certainty he couldn't possibly feel. They'll find us. You'll go home to her. Will they? The question came out raw. We could be anywhere, hundreds of miles of nothing. The transponder spot might be destroyed, might be broadcasting to nothing. We don't know. Nia pulled the blanket tighter. I can't die out here. She's already lost her father. She can't lose me too. Silence. Then, what happened to him? It was too dark, too strange, everything too raw for normal boundaries. So Nia told him. Jamal died when Zara was 2. Heart defect nobody knew about. He was 25, playing basketball, just collapsed on the court. The words came mechanical, repeated so many times they'd worn smooth. 1 second he was alive, next second gone. Left me with a 2-year-old and debt from his hospital bills, and absolutely nothing else. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't pay rent. She heard the bitterness in her voice, didn't try to hide it. I worked 3 jobs that first year. Didn't sleep, barely saw Zara. Finally clawed my way to the assistant position at your company. Thought I'd made it. Stable paycheck, benefits, a future. But I'm still invisible. Still one missed paycheck from losing everything. Graham was quiet for a long moment. The fire popped, sending sparks up into the darkness. I see you, he said finally. For what it's worth, I've always seen you. Nia laughed, sharp and humorless. You don't even call me by my first name. Nia. He said it carefully, testing the shape of it. Your name is Nia Carter. You take your coffee black because the office cream gives you headaches. You wear the same 3 blouses on rotation because they're the only professional ones you own. You work twice as hard as anyone else and get half the recognition. He paused. I see you, I just didn't know what to do about it. The words hit her like a physical thing. She stared at him across the fire. This man who'd made her feel small for 3 years, who just casually revealed he'd been watching all along. What does that mean? It means I'm aware that I'm your boss, that there's a power dynamic, that anything I said or did would be... He stopped, jaw tight. Complicated. So you said nothing, did nothing. Yes. That's a choice too, Mr. Whitmore. Graham. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Out here, we're not CEO and assistant. We're 2 people trying not to die. Call me Graham. The name felt strange in her mouth. Intimate. Like a line being crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Graham, she said, and watched something shift in his expression. A sound split the night, low and rumbling, halfway between a growl and a roar. Nia's blood went ice cold. Graham was on his feet in an instant, grabbing a burning branch from the fire. What was that? Big cat. Nia's grandmother's lessons flooded back. Panther, maybe. Mountain lion. How close? Another sound, closer this time, the crack of a branch. Then silence, the kind that meant something was watching. Nia stood slowly, her back to the fire, eyes trying to penetrate the darkness beyond their small circle of light. Feed the fire. Make it bigger. Graham moved fast, throwing on more wood. The flames leapt higher, pushing back the shadows. Nia grabbed the second burning branch, holding it like a weapon. Then she saw them, eyes, glowing amber in the darkness, maybe 30 feet away. Low to the ground, unblinking. Don't run, she whispered. Make yourself big, loud. Graham stepped up beside her, branch held high. Get out of here! His voice boomed through the forest. CEO authority turned to raw command. Go! The eyes didn't move. Nia's heart hammered against her cracked ribs. She could see the shape now, massive and muscular, black coat that drank the shadows. A panther, a real, living predator that could kill them both in seconds. Together, Graham said low. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They screamed, both of them, wordless and primal, waving their burning branches and stomping their feet, making themselves bigger, louder, more trouble than they were worth. The panther watched for one more heartbeat. Then it turned and melted back into the darkness, silent as smoke. Nia didn't lower her branch until a full minute had passed. Her whole body was shaking, adrenaline and terror and relief crashing through her in waves. Graham stood rigid beside her, still scanning the trees. "Will it come back?" he asked. "Maybe. We need to keep the fire going all night." "Then that's what we'll do." They fed the fire until it was a bonfire, bright enough to push the darkness back 50 feet in all directions. Then they sat close to it, closer than before, the space between them narrowed by shared fear. "Thank you," Nia said quietly, "for standing with me. Where else would I be?" She looked at him, saw the truth in his face. He wasn't joking, wasn't performing. He'd meant it. In that moment, faced with a predator, he'd chosen to stand beside her instead of protecting himself. "We should take shifts," Graham said. "You sleep first, I'll keep watch." "Your head injury is fine. You're the one with broken ribs. Rest, Nia. I've got this." The use of her name did something to her, cracked something open she'd kept carefully locked. She was so tired, her body screaming for sleep. But more than that, she was tired of being alone, tired of carrying everything herself, tired of never having anyone she could trust. "Wake me in 2 hours," she said. 4, 2, 3. Final offer. Despite everything, the crash, the pain, the panther in the darkness, Nia found herself almost smiling. "Deal." She crawled into the lean-to, wrapped the mylar blanket around herself, and let her eyes close. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was Graham silhouetted against the fire, keeping watch, keeping them safe. For the first time in 3 years, Nia Carter let someone else carry the weight. Nia woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of Graham's voice, low and steady, talking to himself, or maybe to the fire. She didn't move, just listened through the haze of half-sleep as dawnlight filtered gray through the lean-to's branches. "Day 2, he was saying. "Water secured, shelter functional, no sign of rescue, injuries stable." A pause. Nia's still breathing. That's what matters. She opened her eyes fully then, the ache in her ribs immediate and sharp. Graham sat cross-legged by the fire, his back to her, shoulders tight with exhaustion. He hadn't woken her for a shift, had kept watch all night. "You were supposed to wake me," she said. He turned, and she saw the toll the night had taken. His eyes were red-rimmed, the gash on his forehead angry and swollen despite the bandage. But he smiled, smiled, something she'd never seen him do before. "You needed the rest more than I needed sleep. That's not how partnerships work." "Is that what this is? A partnership?" Nia crawled out of the lean-to, every muscle protesting. The morning air was cold, sharp in her lungs. She wrapped the mylar blanket around her shoulders and moved to the fire. "Out here?" "Yeah, that's exactly what it is." Graham studied her face like he was reading a contract, looking for the fine print. Then he nodded. "All right, partners. Which means you tell me what we do next." She looked around their small camp. The fire was still strong. He'd kept it fed all night. The stream burbled nearby. Above them, the canopy was so thick she could barely see sky. No helicopter sounds, no search planes, just forest stretching in every direction, vast and indifferent. "We need food," she said, "and we need to mark our location for rescue. Something visible from the air." "I can build a signal. Clear ground, use rocks or branches to spell SOS. "That'll take time. We should split up." "No." His voice was flat, absolute. "We don't split up. Not after last night." The memory of amber eyes in the darkness sat between them. Nia wanted to argue, to point out they'd cover more ground separately. But he was right. The panther was still out there. Maybe others too. "Fine. Signal first, then food." They worked through the morning, falling into a rhythm that surprised them both. Graham cleared a space near the stream where the canopy opened slightly, giving them a patch of visible ground. Nia gathered stones from the stream bed, smooth river rocks the size of her fist. Together they arranged them in letters 10 feet tall, SOS, white stones against dark earth. The work was brutal. Nia's ribs screamed with each bend, each lift. Graham's hands blistered, skin tearing on the rough stones. But they didn't stop, couldn't stop. This was their lifeline, their message to a world that might not even be looking. "Tell me about your company," Nia said as they worked. Talking helped, kept her mind off the pain. "The real story, not the press releases." Graham positioned another stone, wiped sweat from his forehead. "What do you want to know?" Why you're so cold. Why everyone's terrified of you. I'm not cold. Graham, you made a junior analyst cry last month because her presentation had the wrong font. He winced. I was having a bad day. You have a lot of bad days. Yeah. He sat back looking at the half-finished S. My father built that company from nothing. Handed it to me when I was 30 with one instruction. Don't fuck it up. Every decision I make, every person I hire or fire, every quarter that doesn't meet projections, it's his voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough, that I'll never be what he was. He picked up another stone, turned it over in his hands. So I became what I thought I needed to be. Hard, untouchable, someone people feared enough to respect. That's not respect, Naya said quietly. That's just fear. I know. He placed the stone carefully. I know that now. They worked in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher, heat building despite the shade. Nia's stomach was starting to cramp with hunger, empty except for water. They'd need to address that soon. My turn, Graham said. Tell me about Zara. Really tell me. Nia smiled despite everything. She's magic, 7 years old going on 30, smart as hell, reads 3 grades above her level, wants to be a scientist so she can figure out why people are mean to each other. Her throat tightened. She asked me that last week, why her friend's mom wouldn't let them play together anymore after she found out we live in the East Side apartments. Jesus. Yeah, I told her some people are scared of what they don't understand. She said that was stupid. That fear and meanness are different things. Naya placed another stone. She's better than me. Better than this world deserves. She has you as a mother. That's more than most kids get. The words hit deeper than he probably intended. Nia blinked against sudden tears, exhaustion, pain, fear, all of it rising at once. If I don't make it back, you're making it back. But if I don't, Mrs. Chen will take her to social services. My mom's dead. Jamal's family doesn't want anything to do with us. Zara will end up in the system, and she couldn't finish. The thought was too terrible. Graham stopped working, turned to face her fully. Nia, look at me. She did. His eyes were fierce, certain. You're going home to her. We both are. I don't care if we have to walk out of here, if it takes weeks. You're going to see your daughter again, I promise you that. You can't promise. I just did. The certainty in his voice was its own kind of magic. Naya wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. So she nodded, swallowed the fear, and picked up another stone. They finished the SOS as the sun reached its peak. 3 letters, stark white against dark earth, visible from above if anyone was looking. If. Food now, Nia said, before we're too weak to search. She led him along the stream, eyes scanning the banks and forest floor the way Grandma Evelyn had taught her. Most people looked up when they were lost, searching horizons. But survival lived low, in roots and berries, and the small things that kept you breathing. There, she pointed to a cluster of plants with broad, heart-shaped leaves. Wild ginger. The roots are edible, antiseptic too. You're sure? My grandmother made me memorize every edible plant in the southeast before I was 10. Said you never know when you'll need to feed yourself. Nia knelt carefully, using the small knife from the survival kit to dig around the roots. Didn't think I'd actually use it. She pulled up several roots, brushed off the dirt. They were pale and fibrous, smelling sharp and clean. She offered one to Graham. He took it, looked skeptical. Raw? Unless you want to waste time cooking, it's not going to kill you. He bit into it, chewed, and his face did something complicated. Tastes like dirt and soap had a baby. Despite everything, Nia laughed. Welcome to survival cuisine. They gathered more as they walked. Dandelion greens, bitter but nutritious. Cattail roots from the stream's edge, starchy and filling. Nia found a patch of wild strawberries, tiny and tart, and they ate them like treasure. It wasn't enough. Their bodies needed calories, protein, real food, but it was something. It would keep them alive another day. We should check the crash site, Graham said as they worked their way back toward camp. See if there's anything salvageable. Food from the galley, maybe. Nia had been avoiding that thought. The wreckage meant bodies. Mark, the pilots, people who'd been alive yesterday, reduced to cargo. Okay, she said, but we do it fast. Get what we need and get out. The jet looked worse in daylight. The fuselage was crumpled like a soda can, one wing torn completely off. The tree branch still jutted through the cockpit, and Naya made herself not look at the dark shapes slumped in the seats. Graham moved straight to the galley, or what was left of it. Here! He pulled out a small cooler, still intact. Inside were bottles of water, a half-dozen protein bars, some fruit that had turned to mush. Not much, but better than roots. They gathered what they could, the blankets from the passenger seats, a flashlight that miraculously still worked, Graham's jacket from the overhead bin. Nia found her purse wedged under a seat, the photo of Zara still safe in the inside pocket. She pressed it to her chest, breathing through the ache. Nia. Graham's voice was strange. She turned and saw him standing near the emergency exit, holding something, a phone. Mark's phone by the look of the case. Does it work? She asked. He pressed the power button. The screen lit up, battery at 15%, but the signal bars were empty. No service. They were too far from civilization, too deep in the wilderness. We could try texting, Nia said. Sometimes messages queue and send when you get signal. Graham's fingers moved fast, typing. She watched him compose a message to emergency services with their situation, their approximate location based on the flight path, the number of survivors. He hit send. The message sat there, unsent, waiting for a signal that might never come. We keep it, he said. Check it every few hours, maybe we'll get a bar. Battery won't last long. Then we use it smart. Check it twice a day, morning and evening. The rest of the time it stays off. They carried their salvage back to camp. The sun was starting its descent, shadows lengthening through the forest. They'd been out here 30 hours now. 30 hours since the crash. Since their old lives ended and this new reality began. Nia sorted their supplies while Graham rebuilt the fire. They had enough food for maybe 3 days if they were careful. Water was plentiful as long as they stayed near the stream. The real question was warmth. The nights were cold, colder than either of them had anticipated. The mylar blankets helped, but weren't enough. We need to share heat tonight, Nia said, trying to make it clinical, practical. Body warmth. It's the most efficient way to stay alive. Graham looked up from the fire. You're sure? It's survival, not... It doesn't mean anything. Right. Of course. But something in his expression said it meant more than that, at least to him. They ate as the sun set, half a protein bar each, some dandelion greens, water purified from the stream. Nia's stomach cramped around the meager meal, wanting more, but this was what they had. This was enough to survive another day. The forest came alive at dusk, bird calls shifting from day to night species, small things rustling in the undergrowth, and somewhere, distant but real, the cough of a big cat. The panther, maybe. Or something else. Graham fed the fire higher. They'd sleep in shifts tonight, keep the flames strong, stay alert. But first, the cold practical reality of survival. Come here, Nia said, settling into the lean-to. She'd layered the blankets, creating a nest of fabric and mylar. We'll use your jacket as a windbreak. Graham crawled in beside her, moving carefully like he was afraid to touch her. The space was small, forcing them close. Nia could feel his warmth, smell the smoke and sweat and masculine scent of him. It was strange, intimate, nothing like the sterile distance of the office. Turn around, she said. Back to chest. It'll conserve more heat. He did as she instructed. Nia pressed against his back, fitting her body to his, and pulled the blankets over them both. His heart was hammering. She could feel it through his torn shirt. Her own pulse was just as fast. This okay? He asked, voice low. Has to be. They lay like that as full darkness fell. The fire crackled outside their shelter, pushing back the night. Gradually, Graham's heartbeat slowed. His breathing evened out. Warmth built between them, precious and necessary. Nia, he said into the darkness. Yeah? I'm sorry for the last 3 years. For making you feel invisible, for... He stopped, started again. You deserve better than how I treated you. She was quiet for a long moment. The apology sat between them, real and raw in a way nothing in their old life had ever been. Why now? She asked. Why tell me this now? Because we might die out here. And if we do, I want you to know I saw you, that you mattered. We're not dying. But if we do, we're not. Nia tightened her arm around him, fierce and certain. You promised me, remember? You promised I'd get home to Zara. So we're not dying. We're surviving. Both of us. Graham's hand found hers in the darkness, laced their fingers together. Both of us, he agreed. They slept in shifts, trading off through the night. When Nia woke for her watch, she found Graham had pulled her closer in his sleep, his arms wrapped around her like she was something precious he was afraid to lose. She should have moved away, reestablished the distance. Instead, she let herself stay, just for a moment, and felt what it was like to be held. Morning came gray and cold. They woke tangled together, stiff and sore but alive. Graham's face was inches from hers, close enough to see the silver in his stubble, the lines at the corners of his eyes. Day 3, he said. Day 3, she echoed. They fell into a routine born of necessity. Check the phone. No signal. Rebuild the fire. Purify water. Eat sparingly from their dwindling supplies. Nia showed Graham which plants were safe, how to identify animal tracks, how to read the forest's language. He absorbed it all with the same intensity he brought to quarterly reports, asking questions, taking mental notes. You're good at this, he said as she explained how to find north using the sun's position. I'm good at surviving. Had to be. No, you're good at leading, teaching, making hard things make sense. He looked at her directly. You should be doing more than assistant work. You're wasted in that role. Tell that to your HR department. I've applied for 6 promotions in 3 years, never even got an interview. Graham's jaw tightened. I didn't know that. You didn't ask. I should have. He picked up a stick, drew lines in the dirt. When we get back, if you still want to work for me, things will be different. I'll make sure of it. Big promises from a man stuck in the woods. I keep my promises, Nia. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this version of Graham, the one who kept watch, who listened, who saw her, was real, and not just a product of extremity. But she'd learned young that men said things in crisis they didn't mean in daylight. We'll see, was all she said. They spent the afternoon improving their camp. Graham wove pine boughs into a better roof for the lean-to, creating insulation against the cold. Nia dug a small trench around their shelter to channel water away if it rained. They worked side by side, finding a rhythm in the labor. Tell me more about your father, Nia said. The real story. Graham was quiet for a long time, weaving with focused precision. He was brilliant, ruthless, built an empire from a single investment and never let anyone forget it, including me. Were you close? No, he didn't believe in closeness, believed in results. Graham's hands stilled. When I was 16, I told him I wanted to study architecture, design buildings, create something beautiful. He said that was for dreamers and fools, and I was neither. Sent me to business school instead. Did you ever design anything? In secret, sketchbooks full of buildings that'll never exist. He resumed weaving. After he died, I found his office. There was a box in his desk. Inside were all my old sketches, every single one I thought he'd thrown away. He'd kept them. Never said a word, but he'd kept them. Nia heard the pain in his voice, the complicated love for a man who'd never learned to show his own. Maybe he was proud, just didn't know how to tell you. Maybe. Or maybe he just wanted to remind himself that I'd given up my dreams for his. Either way, I became what he wanted, the perfect CEO, cold, efficient, untouchable. Graham looked at her. Lonely. The word hung between them, heavy with truth. I know lonely, Nia said quietly. I've been lonely since Jamal died, surrounded by people every day and completely alone. Not anymore. We're stranded in the wilderness, Graham. We're the definition of alone. No. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, intimate, nothing like the man who'd never touched her before. I'm with you. That's the opposite of alone. Nia's breath caught. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. She should step back, reinforce the boundaries. They were still boss and employee, still separated by power and money and all the rules she'd learned to navigate. But out here, those rules felt meaningless. Graham? A sound cut through the forest, distant but distinct, the rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors. They both froze, eyes locked on each other. Then they were moving, scrambling out of the shelter, running toward the clearing where they'd laid out the SOS. The sound was getting louder, closer. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. There! Graham pointed. She saw it. A helicopter, dark against the gray sky, flying a search pattern maybe a mile away. Too far to see them yet, but close enough to matter. The fire! Nia sprinted back to camp, grabbed armfuls of green pine boughs. Graham understood instantly, helped her pile them onto the flames. The fire smoked, thick white clouds rising into the air. The helicopter kept its course, steady, methodical, searching. Come on, Nia whispered. Come on, see us. Graham pulled off his white undershirt, started waving it overhead. Nia joined him, screaming, jumping, doing everything she could to make them visible. The smoke rose higher, a beacon against the forest. The helicopter banked, changed direction. They see us! Graham's voice was raw with hope. Nia, they see us! The helicopter came closer, the rotor wash bending the trees. Nia could see faces in the window now, a spotlight searching the ground. The SOS was clearly visible, white stones spelling salvation. The helicopter hovered above the clearing. A rope dropped, then a rescue basket. A man in orange began to descend. We're going home, Graham said, and pulled Nia into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, felt his heart racing as fast as hers. 3 days. They'd survived 3 days, and now it was over. Except as the rescuer touched down, as reality rushed back in, Nia felt something crack inside her chest. This, the forest, the fire. Graham holding her like she mattered, this was ending. And when they returned to the real world, to offices and hierarchy, and all the distance between them, what would be left? Mr. Whitmore. Ma'am? I'm with Search and Rescue. Are you injured? Graham stepped back, CEO mask sliding into place so smoothly it made her ache. Nothing critical. My assistant has broken ribs. She needs medical attention first. Just like that. My assistant. The intimacy of the forest evaporating like morning mist. Nia let them help her into the basket, watched the forest fall away as they winched her up. Below, Graham stood alone in the clearing, getting smaller, more distant. And she wondered if the man who'd kept watch all night, who'd promised her she'd get home, had been real at all. Or if he'd already disappeared. The helicopter's interior was all clinical efficiency, white walls, medical equipment, the harsh smell of antiseptic. A paramedic wrapped a blood pressure cuff around Nia's arm, while another checked her pupils with a pen light. Below, through the open door, she could see Graham being loaded into the second basket, his face tilted up toward her, expression unreadable at this distance. Ma'am, can you tell me your name? Nia Carter. Any loss of consciousness since the crash? No, just my ribs. They're broken, I think. The paramedic's hands were gentle but impersonal as she examined Nia's torso, pressing carefully. Cracked at minimum. We'll get x-rays at the hospital. You're lucky. 3 days in the wilderness with injuries like this, most people wouldn't have made it. Lucky. The word felt obscene. 3 people were dead. Mark, the pilots, their lives ended in seconds. And she was supposed to feel lucky? Graham was hauled into the helicopter, dripping from the rescue basket. Water and pine needles clung to his torn clothes. The paramedics descended on him immediately, checking vitals, examining the gash on his forehead. He bore it with the same stoic control he brought to board meetings, answering questions in short, efficient sentences. His eyes found Nia's across the cramped space. For a moment, something passed between them, recognition, connection, the memory of bodies pressed together in the darkness. Then a paramedic shifted, blocking her view, and the moment fractured. Mr. Whitmore, we need to know if you experienced any head trauma beyond the laceration. Dizziness, nausea, memory gaps? No, I'm fine. Sir, you have a significant head wound. I said I'm fine. The CEO voice, sharp and absolute. Conversation over. The helicopter banked hard, heading northeast. Nia caught glimpses of the forest through the window, endless green broken only by the scar of the crash site. From up here it looked impossibly vast, an ocean of trees that could swallow people whole. They'd survived 3 days down there. 3 days that felt like a lifetime. We're taking you to Cascade Regional, the paramedic said. 20 minutes out. Your families have been notified. Zara. The thought hit Nia like electricity. Her daughter would be there, waiting, probably terrified and confused about why Mommy hadn't come home. Mrs. Chen would have kept her safe, but 3 days was an eternity in a 7-year-old's world. My daughter, Nia said urgently. Zara Carter, is she? She's at the hospital with your neighbor. She's safe, ma'am. Everyone's been waiting for you. Relief crashed through Nia so hard she couldn't breathe. Zara was safe. Everything else, the pain, the fear, the complicated mess with Graham, none of it mattered as much as that single fact. She looked over at Graham again. He was staring out the window, jaw tight, one hand gripping the edge of the stretcher hard enough to whiten his knuckles. She wondered who was waiting for him. A wife? Girlfriend? In 3 years she'd never heard him mention anyone, but that didn't mean they didn't exist. The thought made her stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with her injuries. The hospital materialized through the clouds, a sprawling complex of white buildings surrounded by parking lots. News vans clustered near the emergency entrance. Satellite dishes pointed skyward like flowers seeking sun. Nia's stomach dropped. Oh, hell, Graham muttered, seeing the same thing. The media's already here. Of course they are, the paramedic said. Billionaire CEO survives plane crash? That's front page news. The helicopter landed on the roof pad. Doors flew open and suddenly there were people everywhere. Doctors, nurses, hospital administrators. Someone was calling Graham's name. Someone else was calling hers. They were separated immediately. Nia wheeled toward one bay while Graham disappeared in the opposite direction. Wait. Nia tried to sit up, reach for him. Ma'am, you need to stay down. We need to get you to imaging. But I need to... Mr. Whitmore is being well cared for. Right now we need to focus on you. The gurney rolled through automatic doors down bright hallways that made her eyes ache after 3 days of forest dimness. Faces blurred past, concerned, curious, professional. Someone was asking her questions about insurance, about next of kin, about 1,000 details that felt impossibly distant from the reality of fire and survival and Graham's arms around her in the dark. Then she heard it, a voice cutting through the chaos like a bell. Mommy! Nia's head snapped around. Zara was running down the hallway, Mrs. Chen struggling to keep up, her daughter's braids flying behind her like banners. The nurses tried to intercept her, but Zara was too fast, too determined. She reached the gurney and grabbed Nia's hand with both of hers. Mommy, you're alive. They said you crashed and I thought, baby, I'm here. Nia's voice broke. I'm here. I'm okay. You're hurt. Zara's eyes were huge, taking in the bandages, the IV line, the way Nia was moving carefully because of her ribs. Does it hurt bad? Not anymore. Not now that I can see you. The nurses gave them a moment, stepping back while Nia touched her daughter's face, memorized her features like she might disappear. 3 days. She'd been gone 3 days and Zara looked older somehow, like fear had aged her. I was so scared, Zara whispered. Mrs. Chen said you'd come home, but I didn't believe her. I thought maybe you were gone like Daddy. Never. I will always come home to you, baby. Always. They let Zara hold her hand through the x-rays, through the examination, through everything. The diagnosis was what Nia had expected. 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, dehydration, minor lacerations. Nothing that wouldn't heal. The doctor wanted to keep her overnight for observation, standard protocol for crash survivors. Can Zara stay with me? Nia asked. Family members are allowed, yes, we'll bring in a cot. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, eyes red from crying. Nia, thank the heavens. I've been praying every hour. Thank you for taking care of her. I can't ever repay. Hush now. That child is like my own granddaughter. Of course I kept her safe. Mrs. Chen squeezed Nia's shoulder. I'll go get her some dinner from the cafeteria. You two need time. After she left, Zara climbed carefully onto the bed, curling into Nia's side like she used to when she was little. Nia wrapped her arm around her daughter, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, the realness of her. What happened, Mommy? Where were you? Nia told her an edited version. The crash, yes. The forest, surviving, being rescued. She left out the panther, the hunger, the moments she'd thought she might die. Left out Graham entirely, because that was too complicated to explain even to herself. "You were brave," Zara said seriously, "like a superhero." "I was scared every second. Superheroes get scared too. That's what makes them brave." Zara looked up at her. "Mrs. Chen said your boss was with you. Mr. Whitmore, the mean one." Despite everything, Nia almost smiled. "When did I say he was mean?" "You didn't have to say it. I could tell. You always look sad after work." Zara frowned. "Was he mean to you in the forest?" "No, baby. He was—" "What? Kind, human? The man who'd held her through the night and promised she'd get home?" "He was a good partner. He helped us survive." "Then maybe he's not so mean after all." Maybe. Or maybe the forest had shown her a version of Graham that couldn't exist in the real world, where power and money and corporate hierarchies crushed anything soft between them. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. A nurse poked her head in. "Miss Carter?" "There are reporters downstairs asking for a statement. Hospital administration says you don't have to talk to them if you don't want to." "I don't." "Understood. We'll keep them away from this floor." The nurse hesitated. "Mr. Whitmore is holding a press conference in 30 minutes, though, just so you're aware." After she left, Naya turned on the TV mounted to the wall. Every channel was covering the story. Footage of the helicopter landing, rescue workers rushing, the forest stretching vast and green behind them. The chyron read, "Tech CEO and employee. Survive plane crash. Employee. Not assistant. Not even her name. Just employee. Generic and faceless." Zara fell asleep curled against her, exhausted from 3 days of fear. Nia stroked her daughter's hair and watched the news coverage, watched them dissect the crash, speculate about the survival, analyze Graham's company stock prices. Not once did they mention her by name. Then the press conference started. Graham appeared on screen looking like he'd stepped out of a boardroom instead of a wilderness. Someone had found him fresh clothes, dark suit, white shirt, no tie. The gash on his forehead was covered with a neat white bandage. He looked tired, drawn, but composed, in control. "I'll make a brief statement and take a few questions," he said, voice carrying across the crowded hospital lobby. 3 days ago, our private jet experienced catastrophic engine failure and crashed in the Cascade Wilderness. The pilots, Captain James Rivera and First Officer Sarah Chen, died on impact. Our flight attendant, Mark Sullivan, also did not survive. They were good people, dedicated professionals, and my thoughts are with their families." He paused, and for just a moment Nia saw something raw flash across his face before the mask reasserted itself. "I survived, along with my assistant, Nia Carter. We spent 3 days in the wilderness before being rescued this morning. Ms. Carter demonstrated remarkable courage and capability throughout our ordeal. Without her knowledge and quick thinking, I would not be standing here. She is a hero, and I want the world to know it." The reporters erupted with questions, voices overlapping. "Mr. Whitmore, can you describe what happened? Were you injured? What was it like spending 3 days alone with your employee? Is it true you were sharing a shelter?" Graham's jaw tightened at that last one. "We did what was necessary to survive. Ms. Carter's actions saved my life. That's all that matters." "But there are rumors." "There are always rumors. None of them are your concern." His eyes found the camera, looked directly into it. "Nia, if you're watching, thank you for everything." The intimacy in his voice, the way he said her name, made Nia's breath catch. On screen, the reporters were still shouting questions, but Graham was already walking away, done with the performance. Zara stirred against her. "Mommy, why is the TV man talking about you?" They're talking about the crash, baby. It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Her phone, returned by the hospital along with her other belongings, was lighting up with notifications. Text messages from people she barely knew, social media mentions, friend requests from strangers. The press conference had changed something, made her visible in a way she'd spent 3 years avoiding. A knock on the door made her tense, but it was just Mrs. Chen returning with food, concerned and motherly. "That man on TV," Mrs. Chen said, "your boss. He spoke very highly of you. He was just being professional." Didn't sound professional, sounded personal. Mrs. Chen gave her a knowing look. Something happened out there you're not saying? No, we survived, that's all. But Mrs. Chen's eyes saw too much, understood too much. She didn't push, though, just helped Zara eat dinner, told Nia to rest, promised to come back in the morning. After they left, after Zara was tucked into the cot and sleeping deeply, Nia lay in the dark hospital room and tried to sort through the mess in her head. Graham's face on TV, his voice saying her name, the memory of his arms around her, his promise that she'd get home. My assistant, he'd called her to the rescuers. Professional distance reasserted the moment they'd returned to civilization. But then, Nia, if you're watching, thank you for everything. Which version was real? The CEO who kept her at arm's length, or the man who'd stood beside her against a panther? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I need to see you, tomorrow, if you're well enough. Please, G. Nia stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. She should delete it, should reinforce the boundaries, go back to being invisible assistant to untouchable CEO. That was safe. That was what made sense. But safe hadn't kept the jet in the air. Sense hadn't kept them warm in the forest. And the man who'd sent this text was the same one who'd kept watch all night so she could sleep. She typed back, room 437, visiting hours start at 8. Then she turned off her phone, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and tried not to think about what morning would bring. Sleep came eventually, but her dreams were full of forest and fire, and Graham's voice promising her things he might not be able to keep. She woke to gray dawn light filtering through the hospital blinds and the sound of raised voices in the hallway. Zara was still asleep, curled tight in her cot. Nia sat up carefully, ribs protesting, and tried to make out the words. I don't care who you are. Visiting hours don't start until 8. I'm aware. I'll wait. Graham's voice, crisp with authority and barely contained impatience. Nia glanced at the clock, 6:45. She slipped out of bed, moved to the door, opened it a crack. Graham was standing in the hallway outside her room, still in yesterday's suit, looking like he hadn't slept. A nurse was blocking his path, arms crossed. Sir, hospital policy is designed for normal visitors. I'm not a normal visitor. Graham's eyes flicked to the door, caught Nia watching. Something in his expression shifted. Please, I just need 5 minutes. The nurse looked ready to argue, but Nia opened the door fully. It's okay. He can come in. The nurse gave them both a disapproving look but stepped aside. Graham moved past her into the room, and Nia closed the door softly behind him. They stood there in the dim light, two people who'd slept wrapped around each other 3 nights ago, now separated by 3 feet of careful distance. Graham looked at Zara sleeping on the cot, his expression softening. She's beautiful, he said quietly. Looks like you. What are you doing here, Graham? It's not even 7. I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I saw the news coverage, saw how they barely mentioned you. Just employee. Like you were cargo instead of the reason I'm alive. That's how it works. You're the story. I'm just background. No. The word was fierce. You're not background. You're... He took a step closer, and Nia could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the strain. I meant what I said in the press conference. You saved my life, multiple times, and I need you to know that meant something, that you mean something. Graham, let me finish, please. He took a breath. Out there, in the forest, I wasn't your boss. You weren't my employee. We were just 2 people trying to survive. And somewhere in those 3 days, I realized I've been lying to myself for a very long time. Nia's heart was hammering now, loud enough she was sure he could hear it. Lying about what? About why I kept you at distance. Why I never acknowledged you, never called you by your first name, never let myself see you as anything but Carter, my assistant. His eyes held hers, intense and honest. I was afraid. Because from the day you started working for me, I've been aware of you. And I knew that awareness was dangerous, that I could hurt you with it, use the power I had over you. So I made myself cold instead. Untouchable. Kept you invisible because the alternative was what? Wanting you, seeing you, feeling something I had no right to feel. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. Nia opened her mouth, closed it, had no idea what to say. This was her boss, the man who signed her paychecks. The power imbalance was real, crushing, impossible to ignore. But so was the memory of him holding her through the night. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. "You're still my boss. I still need this job. Zara still needs—" I know all of that." Graham took another step closer, close enough now that she could see the silver stubble on his jaw, smell the hospital soap on his skin. "Which is why I'm here to tell you that when we go back, if you want to keep working for me, nothing has to change. I won't push, won't expect anything. You can forget I said any of this and we'll go back to professional distance." "And if I don't want to forget?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Graham went very still. "Then we figure it out," he said. "Carefully, properly. No pressure, no expectations. But Naya..." He reached out, touched her face with infinite gentleness. "I need you to know you have a choice. Real choice. Whatever you decide, your job is safe. Your future is safe. I'll make sure of it." A soft sound from the cot made them both freeze. Zara was stirring, mumbling in her sleep. Nia stepped back from Graham's touch, putting safe distance between them. "You should go," she said quietly, "before she wakes up. It's too much, too fast." "I know, I'm sorry." Graham moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. My uncle is flying in today, Richard Whitmore. Graham's expression went hard. "He's going to have opinions about all of this, about you. Don't let him make you feel small. You're worth 10 of him." "Your uncle?" "Major shareholder in the company. Thinks he should be running it instead of me." Graham's voice was bitter. "He's going to see you as a problem, a complication. Ignore him." Before Nia could respond, he was gone, slipping out into the hallway as quietly as he'd come. Nia stood in the empty room, heart racing, mind spinning. Graham Whitmore had just confessed feelings for her, her boss, the man whose company employed 5,000 people, the man whose net worth she couldn't even calculate, and she had no idea what to do with that information. Zara woke an hour later, stretching and yawning. "Morning, Mommy. Did I hear someone talking?" "Just the nurses, baby. How'd you sleep?" "Okay. Can we go home today?" "We'll see what the doctor says." They spent the morning in careful routine, breakfast from the cafeteria. Zara doing homework at the bedside table while Nia watched mindless TV. The doctor came by at 10, examined Nia's ribs, pronounced her well enough to be discharged with pain medication and strict instructions to rest. 2 weeks minimum before you return to work, the doctor said firmly. Your body needs time to heal. 2 weeks. 2 weeks away from the office, from Graham, from whatever complicated mess they were walking into. Maybe that was good. Maybe she needed the distance to think. They were gathering Nia's things when the commotion started. Raised voices in the hallway. Hospital security being summoned. Then a man's voice, educated and entitled, cutting through it all. I don't care about your protocols. I'm family. Move aside. The door burst open. The man who entered was in his 60s, silver-haired and expensively dressed, with the kind of face that had been handsome once and was now just hard. He looked at Nia with cold assessment, dismissed Zara entirely, and spoke in a voice that expected obedience. Nia Carter? Who's asking? Richard Whitmore, Graham's uncle. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We need to talk, privately. Zara pressed against Nia's side. Nia put her arm around her daughter, protective and firm. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my daughter. Richard's eyes narrowed. Very well, I'll be direct. Whatever happened between you and my nephew in that forest needs to end. Now. Excuse me? Don't play innocent. I've seen the way he looked at you during the press conference. The way he defended you. Richard took a step closer, looming. Graham is vulnerable right now. Traumatized. And you. Ambitious assistant sees an opportunity. Get out. Nia's voice was steel. Right now. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. Hospital security appeared in the doorway, summoned by a nurse who'd been listening. This is my room. My daughter is here. And you don't get to come in here and insult me. Richard looked at the security guards, at Nia standing her ground despite her injuries, and something calculating entered his expression. I see. You're tougher than you look. That's interesting. He pulled a business card from his pocket, set it on the bedside table. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. I can make your life very comfortable or very difficult. Your choice. Then he was gone, leaving the card behind like a threat. Zara looked up at Nia with wide eyes. Mommy, who was that man? Nobody important, baby. But Nia's hands were shaking as she picked up the card. Richard Whitmore, Executive Board Member, Whitmore Enterprises. A phone number embossed in silver. She should throw it away. Should ignore the implied threat. Instead, she tucked it into her purse, a reminder that the forest was gone and they were back in a world where power crushed people like her every day. They went home to the East Side apartments in Mrs. Chen's old sedan, Zara chattering the whole way about everything that had happened while Nia was gone. School projects, a fight with her best friend, the pizza Mrs. Chen had let her have for dinner 2 nights in a row. Normal things. Beautiful, mundane, precious, normal things. Nia leaned her head against the window and tried to focus on her daughter's voice instead of the business card burning a hole in her purse. Richard Whitmore's cold assessment. The implied threat wrapped in corporate politeness. Their apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Small, cramped, the furniture second-hand but clean. Zara's artwork covered the fridge, spelling tests marked with gold stars. A life built from scraps and determination. Looking at it now, after 3 days in the wilderness and Graham's confession in the hospital, Nia felt the gap between her world and his like a physical wound. What had she been thinking? That they could bridge that distance? That a billionaire CEO and a single mother struggling to make rent had any kind of future? Mommy, are you crying? Zara was looking at her with concern. No, baby, just tired. I think I need to lie down. Mrs. Chen helped her to the bedroom, fussed over her like a mother hen. You rest now. I'll keep Zara occupied, make you both some soup. You don't have to. Hush. Let someone take care of you for once. Nia lay in her own bed, in her own room, and felt more displaced than she had sleeping on the forest floor. Everything here was familiar but wrong, like putting on clothes that no longer fit. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but every time she started to drift, she saw Graham's face, heard his voice, felt the ghost of his arms around her. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. I know my uncle came to see you. Whatever he said, ignore it. Please call me when you're ready to talk. G. Nia stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, typed and deleted 3 different responses. Finally, she settled on, I need time to think. His reply came immediately. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. But that was the problem, wasn't it? He wasn't going anywhere. He'd still be her boss, still hold all the power, still be able to destroy her career with a word. And now she knew he had feelings for her, which made everything infinitely more complicated. She turned off her phone and pulled the blanket over her head. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Nia stayed home, healing, while the world outside went crazy. The crash was still front-page news. Graham did 2 more interviews, deflecting questions about their time in the forest with practiced ease. Social media was full of speculation, some supportive, some vicious. Nia made the mistake of reading the comments once and never did it again. Gold digger, opportunist, lucky nobody. But also, she saved his life. Hero, badass survivor. The company sent flowers, an enormous arrangement that barely fit through the apartment door, with a card that said, wishing you a swift recovery, signed by Human Resources. Nothing personal, nothing from Graham, which was probably for the best. Zara went back to school and Nia spent her days in the apartment trying not to go stir-crazy. Mrs. Chen brought soup and gossip, filled the silence with chatter about the neighbors, the weather, everything except the one thing Nia couldn't stop thinking about. On day 5, her phone rang. Unknown number, but she recognized the area code. Corporate headquarters. Ms. Carter, this is Jennifer Wu from HR. I'm calling to schedule your return-to-work meeting. Nia sat up carefully, ribs still aching. I have another week of medical leave. Yes, but we'd like to meet before then. Discuss your transition back to the office. Would tomorrow at 2 work for you? It wasn't really a question. I'll be there. She hung up and stared at the wall, stomach churning. A meeting with HR. That could mean anything: performance review, reassignment, termination dressed up in polite corporate language. Or it could mean Graham had kept his promise, that things were changing. Only one way to find out. The next afternoon, Nia stood in front of her closet and tried to figure out what to wear to potentially life-altering meeting. The 3 blouses Graham had mentioned were there, cleaned and pressed by Mrs. Chen. Looking at them now, she saw what he'd seen. The same rotation, week after week, professional armor worn thin. She chose the blue one, paired it with her best black pants, took extra care with her makeup to hide the exhaustion. The bandage was gone from her eye now, leaving only a thin red line that would probably scar. A permanent reminder of the crash, visible every time she looked in the mirror. Mrs. Chen agreed to pick up Zara from school. Nia took the bus downtown, watching the city slide past the windows. Seattle in early spring, gray and green and alive with people who had no idea what it felt like to fall out of the sky. The Whitmore building was all glass and steel, 70 floors of corporate power jutting into the clouds. Nia had worked here for 3 years and still felt small every time she entered the lobby. The security guard waved her through, they knew her face, and she took the elevator to the 34th floor where HR lived. Jennifer Wu was waiting in a conference room, perfectly professional in a gray suit. She stood when Nia entered, shook her hand with careful gentleness. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. How are you feeling?" "Better. Still sore, but healing." "Good. Please sit." Jennifer opened a folder, and Nia's stomach dropped. This was it, the conversation that would determine her future. "I'll be direct," Jennifer said. "The company is extremely grateful for your actions during the crash. You demonstrated courage, capability, and leadership under extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Whitmore has made it very clear that you are a valuable asset to this organization." Nia waited for the but. There was always a but. "As such, we'd like to offer you a promotion. Senior Project Coordinator, reporting directly to the executive team. 30% salary increase, full benefits package, and a signing bonus to compensate for the trauma you experienced." The words didn't make sense. Nia stared at Jennifer, trying to process. "A promotion?" "Yes. Your skills have been underutilized in your current role. This position would allow you to contribute at a higher level while providing better compensation and career growth opportunities." Nia's mind was spinning. "I applied for 6 promotions in 3 years, never got a single interview." Jennifer's expression flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. "I'm aware. That was an oversight on our part. We're correcting it now." An oversight. 3 years of being passed over, of watching less qualified people advance while she stayed invisible, reduced to an oversight. "Is this coming from Mr. Whitmore?" Nia asked carefully. "The executive team made this decision collectively, but yes, Mr. Whitmore advocated strongly for your advancement." Jennifer slid a packet of papers across the table. "This is the offer letter. Take a few days to review it. We'd like to have you start in the new role 2 weeks from now, once you're fully recovered." Nia picked up the packet with trembling hands. The salary number made her eyes water. It was more than double what she made now, enough to move out of the East Side apartments, enough to give Zara dance lessons, summer camps, a life that wasn't just survival. But it came from Graham, because of Graham, and she didn't know if that made it a gift or a cage. "Can I ask you something?" Nia said. "Off the record?" Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. "If the crash hadn't happened, if I'd applied for this position through normal channels, would I have gotten it?" The silence was answer enough. Jennifer looked down at her hands, and when she spoke, her voice was quieter. "Probably not. The hiring process here, there are biases, conscious and unconscious. It's something we're working to address, but change is slow. So I had to nearly die to be seen as qualified. I can't speak to what would or wouldn't have happened in alternate circumstances. I can only tell you that right now, today, this offer is real and it's yours if you want it." Nia stood, tucking the packet under her arm. "I'll think about it. Thank you for your time." She made it to the elevator before the shaking started, leaned against the wall as the floors counted down, trying to breathe through the tangle of emotions. Anger, gratitude, resentment, hope, all of it crashing together until she couldn't tell which was which. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, her floor, if she took this job, and she stepped out without thinking. Muscle memory from 3 years of fetching coffee, delivering reports, existing in Graham's shadow. His office was at the end of the hall, door closed. She should leave, should go home and think about the offer logically, rationally, without the complication of seeing him. Instead, she knocked. "Come in." Graham was behind his desk, surrounded by papers and laptop screens, looking every inch the CEO. He glanced up, saw her, and went very still. "Nia, I just came from HR." He stood slowly, came around the desk, but didn't approach her, kept the distance she might need. "And?" 30% raise, senior project coordinator, reporting to the executive team. She met his eyes. "Did you do this because you feel guilty, or because you meant what you said in the hospital?" "I did it because you've earned it 10 times over, because you're brilliant and capable, and you should have been promoted years ago." His voice was steady, certain. "The crash just made me see what should have been obvious all along. Your uncle came to see me, warned me away from you, said I was an ambitious assistant taking advantage." Graham's jaw went tight. "I know. He called me after. I told him to stay the hell away from you. He has your company's business card, Graham. He's on your board. How exactly am I supposed to ignore him? By taking the promotion and proving him wrong. By being so goddamn good at your job that no one can question whether you belong there." Graham took a step closer. "Or by walking away, turning down the offer, finding work somewhere else, where there's no history, no complications. I meant what I said. You have a choice. Real choice." "Do I?" The question came out raw. "Because it feels like every option leads back to you. Take the job. I'm working for you. Turn it down. I'm running from you. Either way, you're there, and I don't know how to—" She stopped, fighting tears. "I don't know how to want something I can't have." "You can have it." Graham closed the distance between them, slow enough that she could step back if she wanted. She didn't. "The job, the life you deserve, all of it, with or without me. But Nia—" He touched her face like he had in the hospital, gentle and reverent. "If you want me to, I'm yours. However that looks. Whatever it takes to make it right. Your uncle will destroy me. Probably destroy you too. Let him try. I survived a plane crash. I can survive my uncle's disapproval. The media will tear us apart. Then we don't give them anything to tear apart. We keep it private. Build something real away from cameras and boardrooms and all the noise." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I know it's complicated. I know I'm asking you to risk everything, but I'm risking everything too, and I think what we found in that forest was worth it." Nia closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. 3 years she'd been invisible to this man. 3 days in the wilderness had changed everything. And now she stood at a crossroads with no good map, no clear path, just the memory of his arms around her and the impossible hope that maybe, somehow, they could make this work. "I need time," she said again, "to think about the job, about all of this. Take it. I'm not going anywhere." She opened her eyes, looked at him fully, saw the man who'd kept watch through the night, who'd stood beside her against a panther, who'd promised she'd get home and kept that promise. Saw the CEO who'd made her feel small for 3 years, who held power over her career, who came with complications that could destroy her. Both versions were true. Both were real. "I should go," she said. Graham stepped back, giving her space. "Yeah, okay." She made it to the door before turning back. "Graham? Thank you for the offer, for seeing me. Even if I don't, even if this doesn't, just thank you." "Nia?" He was silhouetted against the window, the city spread out behind him like a kingdom. "For what it's worth, I see you. I've always seen you. I'm just sorry it took a crash to make me say it." She left before she could do something stupid like cry or kiss him or make promises she didn't know if she could keep. The next week was torture. Nia read the offer letter so many times she had it memorized. Did the math on what the salary would mean. A 2-bedroom apartment, savings, security. Everything she'd been fighting for since Jamal died. But it came tangled with Graham, with feelings she didn't know how to navigate, with the very real threat of his uncle and the media and 1,000 ways this could go wrong. She talked to Mrs. Chen, who said follow your heart, Talked to her sister on the phone, who said take the money and run. Talked to Zara, who asked if Mr. Whitmore was nice now, and seemed satisfied when Nia said yes, he was. None of it helped. On the 10th day, Richard Whitmore called her directly. "Miss Carter, I hope you're recovering well." Nia's hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer, $500,000, cash, in exchange for your resignation and a signed NDA stating nothing happened between you and my nephew in that forest." The number was obscene, life-changing, more money than Nia would make in years. "You're trying to buy me off. I'm offering you a clean exit. Take the money, start fresh somewhere else, avoid the mess that's coming." His voice was smooth, reasonable. "Because make no mistake, Ms. Carter, if you stay, if you pursue whatever this is with Graham, I will make your life hell. I'll audit every expense report you've ever filed, question every decision you make, ensure that everyone in this industry knows you slept your way into a promotion. I didn't sleep with anyone. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality, and I control the perception." He paused. "Or you take the money and disappear. Your choice." Nia's vision went red. "Here's my choice. I'm going to take that promotion. I'm going to be so good at my job that you can't touch me. And if you come after me, I'll bury you in so many harassment lawsuits your head will spin. Are we clear?" She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding her system. She'd just threatened a billionaire, a board member, a man who could destroy her career with 3 phone calls. But she'd also just chosen her path. She called Graham. He answered on the first ring. "Nia, I'm taking the job, and I'm taking you, whatever comes with it." Silence. Then, "Are you sure?" "No, I'm terrified. Your uncle just offered me $500,000 to disappear, and part of me wanted to take it because it would be easier, safer." She took a breath. "But I didn't survive a plane crash to play it safe, so yeah, I'm in." "He offered you," Graham's voice went hard. "I'm going to kill him." "Don't. Let me handle him my way, by being better than he thinks I can be." "Nia, I need you to understand what you're walking into. The board meeting is in 3 days. Richard's going to make a move. Try to remove me as CEO, claim I'm unstable after the crash. If we're together, if there's even a hint of impropriety, he'll use it as ammunition. Then we give him nothing to use. We're professional at work. Whatever this is between us, we keep it private until the dust settles." She paused. "Unless you're having second thoughts." "Never. I need you to be sure. Really sure." Nia thought about the forest, the fire, the panther's eyes in the darkness, Graham's arms around her, keeping her warm, keeping her safe. She thought about Zara asking if he was nice now, and the way he'd looked at her daughter with such gentleness. She thought about 3 years of being invisible and 10 days of being seen. "I'm sure," she said. The board meeting was closed door, but word leaked out anyway. Corporate buildings were like sieves. Secrets never stayed secret long. Nia started her new job the same day, reporting to the executive team in a corner office that still smelled like fresh paint. Her new boss was a woman named Patricia Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, but just as formidable. She welcomed Nia with firm handshake and immediate assignments. "I don't care about the drama," Patricia said. "I care about results. Show me you can handle the work, and we'll get along fine." Nia threw herself into it with desperate focus. Project timelines, budget analyses, strategic planning. The work was complex, challenging, exactly what she'd been capable of all along if anyone had bothered to give her the chance. She didn't see Graham. He was locked in the boardroom all day with Richard and the other board members, fighting for his position, fighting for his company, fighting, maybe, for the future they were trying to build. By 5 p.m., the building was buzzing. Something had happened. Something big. Nia was reviewing a presentation when Patricia stuck her head in. "Conference room, now. Executive announcement." The conference room was packed. Nia found a spot near the back, trying to be invisible out of habit. Then she saw Graham walk in, and her heart stopped. He looked like he'd been through a war, exhausted, drawn, but standing tall. His uncle was notably absent. Graham surveyed the room, his gaze finding Nia for just a moment before moving on. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "Thank you all for gathering. I'll keep this brief. The board met today to discuss the company's future in the wake of the crash. There were concerns about my ability to lead given the trauma of the event. He paused. Those concerns have been addressed. I remain CEO. Richard Whitmore has tendered his resignation from the board, effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the room. Nia felt her knees go weak. Graham continued, steady and certain. We're also implementing immediate policy changes. Mandatory bias training for all hiring managers, third-party audits of promotion decisions, and a commitment to transparent, merit-based advancement for all employees. His eyes found Nia again. We've failed too many talented people for too long. That ends now. The room erupted in whispers. Graham held up a hand for silence. One more thing. The Crash Survivors Fund will be expanded to include scholarships for the families of Captain Rivera, First Officer Chen, and Mark Sullivan. They gave their lives in service to this company. We'll honor that sacrifice. He wrapped up quickly after that, fielding a few questions before retreating to his office. Nia wanted to follow, to ask what had happened, how he'd won. But people were watching her, some with respect, some with suspicion, and she couldn't afford to give them ammunition. She went back to her office instead, closed the door, and let herself shake. Her phone buzzed. Graham. Rooftop, 20 minutes, please. The rooftop garden was the company's worst-kept secret, a green space 40 floors up where employees went to hide from the fluorescent lights. Nia took the service elevator, emerged into late afternoon sun and the smell of flowers. Graham was waiting by the railing, looking out over the city. He didn't turn when she approached, just spoke into the wind. I gave him a choice, resign quietly, or I released the audit reports showing he'd been embezzling for 5 years. Small amounts, hard to track, but there. He chose resignation. You've known for 5 years? 6. My father knew too, kept it quiet to avoid scandal. I should have dealt with it when I took over. Instead, I let him stay because he was family, because exposing him would hurt the company. Graham turned to face her. I was a coward, but not anymore. Nia moved to stand beside him, their shoulders almost touching. What happens now? Now we rebuild. The company, our reputations, whatever this is between us. He looked at her. If you still want it. I want it. I'm scared of it, but I want it. Good, because I have a proposition for you. Graham pulled something from his pocket. A business card, plain white with simple text. I'm starting something new, a subsidiary focused on sustainable design. The architecture I always wanted to do, combined with the business I know how to run. It'll be small, separate from the main company. No board interference, no corporate politics. He handed her the card. It read, Whitmore Design Partners, LLC. I want you to run it with me, Graham said. Equal partners, 50-50 ownership. You bring the operations expertise, I bring the vision and capital. We build something from scratch. Do it right this time. Nia stared at the card, her heart hammering. You're offering me half your company? I'm offering you a partnership, real partnership. No boss, no power dynamic. Just 2 people building something together. He touched her hand carefully. The promotion here is yours no matter what. This is separate. A choice that has nothing to do with what we survived and everything to do with what we could create. Graham, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. Talk to a lawyer. Make sure the terms are fair. I want this to be right. Nia looked at the card, then at him, then out at the city spread below them. A month ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was standing on a rooftop being offered half a company by a man who'd kept watch while she slept. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. But then, surviving a plane crash had been impossible too. Ask me again in 6 months, she said finally, when the dust settles, when we know if this thing between us is real or just trauma bonding, when I've proven I can handle the promotion without anyone thinking I slept my way into it. She met his eyes. If you still want me, then, if we both still want this, ask me again. Graham smiled, real and warm and nothing like the cold CEO she'd worked for. 6 months. I can work with that. Until then, we're professional, colleagues. No relationship, no complications. Agreed. He held out his hand. Partners? Nia shook it, felt the warmth of his skin, the promise in his grip. Partners. They stood on the rooftop as the sun set, 2 people who'd fallen out of the sky and somehow landed on their feet, watching the city light up below them and imagining the future they might build together. If they were brave enough to try. 6 months felt like forever and no time at all. Naya threw herself into work with single-minded intensity, determined to prove she belonged in the corner office through merit alone. She restructured 3 failing projects in her first month, identified cost savings that made the CFO weep with joy, and built a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and impossible to intimidate. People stopped whispering about how she got the promotion and started asking for her advice instead. Graham kept his distance. They passed each other in hallways with professional nods, exchanged emails about cross-departmental initiatives in language so formal it made her teeth ache. He dated a venture capitalist named Alexandra for 6 weeks. Nia saw the photos in the business section, and she told herself the twist in her chest was indigestion, not jealousy. She moved out of the East Side apartments into a modest 2-bedroom in a better school district, enrolled Zara in the dance classes she'd always wanted, watched her daughter spin and leap like joy given form. Built a life that was stable, secure, hers. And every night she pulled out the business card Graham had given her on the rooftop and wondered. 3 months in, Richard Whitmore tried one last play. An anonymous tip to a gossip blog about the CEO and his assistant getting cozy in the wilderness. The story went viral for 48 hours, dredging up speculation and innuendo. Nia weathered it by working harder, speaking to no one, and letting her results speak louder than rumors. Graham released a single statement. Ms. Carter and I survived a traumatic event together. She demonstrated extraordinary capability and has since proven herself an invaluable asset to this company. Any suggestion of impropriety is baseless and insulting to her professionalism. The story died. Richard's lawyer sent a cease and desist when Graham threatened to pursue the embezzlement charges after all. The whispers faded. And still Nia kept her distance, counting down the days. 5 months in, Graham showed up at Zara's dance recital. Nia was in the audience, recording on her phone, while her daughter performed a solo that made her heart swell with pride. She didn't notice him until intermission, when Zara came running up and stopped short, staring past Nia's shoulder. Mr. Whitmore! Nia turned. Graham stood 3 rows back, holding flowers. Daisies, not roses, simple and sweet. He looked uncertain in a way she'd never seen him, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. I hope it's okay that I came, he said. Zara sent me an invitation, through my assistant. Nia looked at her daughter, who was trying very hard to look innocent. You did what? He said to ask me if I needed anything. Remember, at the hospital? Zara's chin came up, defiant. I needed someone to see me dance, and you looked sad whenever you talked about him, so I thought maybe, baby, you can't just invite people to... It's fine, Graham interrupted gently. If it's not okay, I'll go, but Zara's been emailing me about her rehearsals for 2 months, and I wanted to see her perform. He crouched down to Zara's level. You were incredible up there. Your turns were perfect, Zara beamed. Really? You know about dance? My mother was a ballerina. I grew up in studios. He handed her the flowers. These are for you, for a beautiful performance. Watching them together, Graham's careful gentleness, Zara's delighted smile, something cracked open in Nia's chest. This man had kept her daughter's confidence for 2 months, had learned about dance to understand her emails, had shown up with flowers not to impress Nia, but to honor a 7-year-old's hard work. Stay, Nia heard herself say, for the second half, if you want. Graham's eyes met hers, and the hope in them was almost painful. I want. He sat beside them for the rest of the recital, quiet and respectful, applauding at all the right moments. Afterward, they went for ice cream, all 3 of them, sitting in a booth at the shop near Nia's apartment while Zara chattered about her performance, and Graham listened like every word mattered. I should get her home, Nia said eventually. School night. Of course. Graham stood, then hesitated. Nia, would you have coffee with me? Tomorrow, maybe, just to talk. Zara kicked her under the table. Nia ignored her. Tomorrow's complicated. I have back-to-back meetings until 6. Saturday, then. There's a place near the waterfront. Good coffee. Quiet. Please. The please undid her. Okay, Saturday, 10 a.m. She regretted it immediately and spent the next 2 days trying to talk herself out of going. This was a mistake. They'd agreed to wait. She'd promised herself she wouldn't let feelings complicate her career. But Saturday morning found her at the coffee shop anyway, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of armor, her hair loose instead of pinned back. Being Nia instead of Ms. Carter, senior project coordinator. Graham was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups in front of him. He stood when she approached. Black coffee, no cream. You remembered. I remember everything about you. They sat in awkward silence for a moment, the weight of 6 months pressing between them. Finally, Graham spoke. I dated Alexandra to prove I could let you go. Lasted 6 weeks before I had to admit I was using her as a distraction from the person I actually wanted. He met her eyes. That was unfair to her, and pointless. Because every project proposal I reviewed, I thought about showing you. Every decision I made, I wanted your input. You've been running through my head for 6 months like a song I can't stop hearing. Graham, let me finish, please. He took a breath. I know we agreed to wait, to be professional. And you've been amazing, Nia. Better than amazing. Everyone in the company knows you earned that promotion 10 times over. No one questions it anymore. Some people still do. People will always talk, but you've proven them wrong. You've proven my uncle wrong. Hell, you've proven me wrong about half the operational changes I thought wouldn't work. He smiled, small and genuine. You're brilliant, and I'm asking, 6 months later, like we agreed, do you still want this? Do you still want me? Nia wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, feeling the warmth seep into her skin. 6 months. She'd been so sure the forest had created something artificial, that trauma had bonded them in ways that couldn't survive reality. But sitting here, watching him watch her with those ocean blue eyes, she felt the same pull she'd felt sleeping wrapped around him under the stars. I'm terrified, she said honestly, of the power dynamic, of what people will say, of screwing up my career or hurting Zara if this doesn't work. All legitimate fears, but I've spent 6 months trying to talk myself out of wanting you, and it hasn't worked. I still think about the forest, about you keeping watch, about the way you looked at me when I woke up. She met his eyes. So yes, I still want this, but we do it my way. Slow, private. No grand gestures, no public declarations. We figure out if this is real before we tell the world. Your way, Graham agreed. Whatever you need. And the partnership offer, the design company, is that still on the table? Always. But that's separate from us. Business and personal don't have to be tangled. Everything's tangled, Graham. That's life. Nia leaned forward. But if we're going to do this, really do this, I want both. The partnership and the relationship. I want to build something with you that's ours, not dependent on your family's company or anyone's approval. Can you handle that? Graham's smile was bright enough to light the whole coffee shop. I've been waiting 6 months for you to say yes. I can handle anything. They started slow, carefully, like 2 people learning to walk on ice. Coffee dates that looked like business meetings. Dinners at quiet restaurants where no one from the company would see them. Graham came to another of Zara's recitals, then a school play, gradually becoming a fixture in the margins of their lives. Nia met his mother, an elegant woman who'd been a dancer before marrying into the Whitmore family and who looked at her son with fierce pride mixed with worry. He's different since the crash, she told Nia over tea. Lighter, like he finally figured out he doesn't have to be his father. I think the crash changed both of us. Good. He needs someone who sees him as Graham, not as the CEO, someone who survived the worst with him and chose to stay anyway. His mother squeezed her hand. I'm glad he found you. 2 months in, they told Zara officially. She took the news with the matter-of-fact acceptance of children who'd already figured it out. Does this mean you're my dad now? She asked Graham. He looked stricken, honored, terrified. That's up to you. I'd like to be part of your life if you'll let me. But your dad was Jamal. I'm not trying to replace him. Daddy died when I was little. I don't really remember him. Zara tilted her head, considering. Can you have 2 dads? One who's in heaven and one who's here? Yeah, Graham said, voice rough. Yeah, I think you can. 3 months in, they filed the papers for Whitmore Design Partners. 50-50 ownership, just as Graham had promised. They rented a small office space in Pioneer Square, hired 2 junior architects and a project manager, started pitching sustainable design projects to companies who wanted green buildings without sacrificing aesthetics. It was hard, exhausting work. They argued over every decision, Nia pushing for practical profitability, Graham advocating for artistic vision. But the arguments were productive, passionate, 2 strong minds sharpening each other into something better. Their first project was a community center in the neighborhood where Nia grew up. Graham designed something beautiful, all light and open space and gardens that would bring nature into the urban landscape. Nia made it happen, navigating permits, managing budgets, sweet-talking contractors into staying on schedule. The day they broke ground, Nia stood beside Graham watching the bulldozers and felt something settle in her chest. They were building something real, something that mattered. "This is what I wanted," Graham said quietly. "Not the empire, not the board meetings and quarterly reports. This, creating something beautiful that helps people." "You could have done this years ago." "No, I couldn't. I was too busy being what my father wanted, what my uncle expected, what I thought I had to be." He looked at her. "The crash broke me open. You helped me put myself back together as someone better." 4 months in, the media found them. A photo of them leaving a restaurant. Graham's hand on the small of Nia's back, both of them laughing at something. The headlines were predictable. Crash survivors find love, from jungle to romance. CEO's secret relationship. Nia braced for the backlash. Instead, the response was mostly positive. People loved a survival story with a happy ending. The few critics who tried to suggest impropriety were drowned out by supporters pointing to Nia's track record, her obvious qualifications, the fact that she was literally building her own company. Patricia called her into the office the day the story broke. Nia went prepared to resign if necessary. "Close the door," Patricia said. Nia did, stomach churning. "I'm not going to ask about your personal life. That's your business. I'm going to ask if this relationship affects your ability to do your job." "No, ma'am. If anything, it makes me better, more motivated to prove myself." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "You've been the best hire I've made in 5 years. Your promotion was deserved. If anyone suggests otherwise, you send them to me." She smiled. "Now get back to work. The Riverside project needs your magic." That night, Nia came home to find Graham and Zara in the kitchen making dinner. Or trying to, the counter covered in flour and both of them laughing. She stood in the doorway watching them, her daughter teaching a billionaire how to roll out pasta dough, and felt her heart expand in her chest. This was what happiness looked like. 5 months in, Graham took her to the forest. Not the same forest where they'd crashed. Neither of them were ready for that. But a wilderness area outside Seattle, accessible by hiking trail, where they could camp without the threat of death hanging over them. "I wanted to make better memories," he explained as they set up their tent. "Replace the fear with something good." They built a fire together, cooked food over the flames, slept wrapped in each other's arms in a sleeping bag instead of huddled for survival. In the morning, Graham woke her with coffee and a question. "The design company is growing. We have 6 projects lined up, 3 more in proposal stage. We need to expand." "Okay, we can hire more staff, look at bigger office space. I want to leave Whitmore Enterprises, step down as CEO, focus on the design company full-time." Nia sat up, shocked. "Graham, that's your father's company, your legacy." "My father's dead, and his legacy was building an empire at the expense of everything else. Family, health, happiness. I don't want that." Graham took her hands. "I want this. Us. Building something that matters. I want to coach Zara's soccer team and come home for dinner and design buildings that make people's lives better. I want a life, Nia, not just a career." "What about the board, the shareholders?" "I have a successor in mind, Patricia Chen. She's brilliant, respected, ready for the responsibility. The transition would be smooth." He searched her face. "But I need to know you're in, that you want to build this company with me. Make it our life's work, not just a side project." Nia thought about the community center, about the way Graham's face lit up when he talked about sustainable architecture. Thought about working side by side with him, equals in every way, creating something beautiful together. "Yes," she said. "I'm in." 6 months exactly after their rooftop conversation, Graham showed up at Nia's apartment on a Saturday morning with a picnic basket and a nervous expression. I have a surprise. Pack a bag for you and Zara. Overnight. Graham, I have work. It's Saturday, and I already cleared it with Zara. She's in. Her daughter emerged from her bedroom grinning. We're going on an adventure, Mommy. They drove 2 hours to the coast, to a small beach house Graham had rented for the weekend. It was simple, beautiful, all windows facing the ocean. Zara ran straight to the beach, chasing waves and collecting shells while Naya and Graham stood on the deck watching her. I have something for you, Graham said. He pulled out a folder, handed it to her. Inside were architectural drawings. Plans for a house. Not this rental, but something original. Designed specifically, clearly for them. 3 bedrooms, an office space for Nia, a studio for Graham, a garden for growing vegetables, a reading nook where Zara could curl up with books. Every detail thoughtful, personal, perfect. I designed it for us, Graham said quietly. If you want it, if you're ready for that step. No pressure, no timeline, just, this is what I'm imagining. A home we build together. Nia traced the drawings with her finger, seeing their future in the lines. It's perfect. There's something else. He led her down to the beach where Zara was playing. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Graham took both her hands. 6 months ago, you asked me to wait. To prove this was real and not just trauma. I've waited. I've proven it. At least I hope I have. He dropped to one knee in the sand. Zara squealed. Nia's hand flew to her mouth. Nia Carter, you saved my life. Then you showed me how to live it. You're brilliant, fierce, beautiful, and you've made me a better man just by believing I could be one. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, a single stone that caught the sunset light. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me? Argue with me about floor plans, teach me how to braid hair, and let me love you and Zara for the rest of my life? Nia looked at him kneeling in the sand, at Zara dancing with excitement, at the house plans that represented their future. A month ago, she would have been terrified, worried about optics, about power dynamics, about what people would say. But she'd survived a plane crash, had fought a panther, and won, had rebuilt her life from nothing once already. She could be brave enough for this. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Graham stood and kissed her while Zara cheered and the ocean crashed behind them. He slipped the ring onto her finger, perfect fit like he'd known, and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Can I call you Dad now? Zara asked, tugging on Graham's sleeve. He scooped her up, held both of them close. I would be honored. They spent the weekend planning. Not the wedding, that could wait, but the life they wanted to build. Graham would transition out of the CEO role over the next 6 months, train Patricia, ensure the company was in good hands. They'd expand Whitmore Design Partners, move into the new office space they'd been eyeing, maybe hire that brilliant young architect from Portland. And they'd build the house. Together. Every decision made jointly, every room designed with love. What about your uncle? Nia asked on the drive home, Zara asleep in the back seat. Richard signed away his voting shares as part of his resignation. He has no power anymore, no ability to hurt us. He could still make trouble. Let him try. I'm done being afraid of him, done letting powerful men tell me who I can love or how I should live. Graham reached over, laced his fingers through hers. I choose you. Every time I choose you. 3 months later, they were married in a small ceremony on the same beach where he'd proposed. No media circus, no corporate theater. Just 60 people who actually mattered. Friends, family, colleagues who'd become friends. Patricia stood up as Nia's maid of honor, having become a mentor and confidant. Graham's mother cried through the whole ceremony. Zara was the flower girl, scattering petals with solemn concentration before running to hug them both. The vows were simple, written by them instead of borrowed from tradition. Graham promised to see her, always. To stand beside her against panthers and board members and anything else the world threw at them. To build a life worthy of the second chance they'd been given. Nia promised to be brave, to choose partnership over protection, to let him love her daughter as his own. To argue with him when he was wrong and celebrate with him when he was right and forgive him when he was human. They promised to survive, together, for life. The reception was held in the partially completed community center, their first project. The walls weren't finished yet, but the bones were beautiful. All that light and open space Graham had envisioned, made real through Nia's determination and their combined effort. "This is who we are," Graham said during his toast, gesturing at the unfinished walls. "Always building, always growing, never quite perfect, but getting better every day." Nia danced with her husband. That word still felt surreal and wonderful, while Zara spun between them. Later, Graham danced with Zara while Nia watched, her heart so full it ached. Patricia caught her eye, raised her glass in a silent toast. The promotion had been the right call. The partnership was thriving, and the scared, invisible assistant who'd climbed onto a doomed plane 6 months ago was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and claimed it. As the party wound down, Graham pulled Nia aside onto the half-finished balcony. Below them, Seattle glittered in the darkness, the city where she'd been invisible, where she'd struggled and survived and finally found her place. "Happy?" Graham asked. "Terrified and happy. Is that allowed?" "I think that's called being alive." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes. For taking the risk. For believing we could build something beautiful out of catastrophe." He turned her to face him. "The crash was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and finding you was the best. I don't know how to reconcile those two facts." "Maybe you don't have to. Maybe survival is always complicated." Nia touched his face, traced the scar on his forehead that matched hers, permanent reminders of the day their lives changed. "We fell out of the sky and somehow landed here. That's enough." 6 months later, they broke ground on their house. Nia was 4 months pregnant, a surprise that had sent them both into joyful panic, and Zara insisted the baby's room needed to be painted purple. The community center opened to standing ovation. 3 more projects followed. Whitmore Design Partners grew from a dream to a thriving company known for innovative, sustainable architecture that served communities instead of just corporations. Graham coached Zara's soccer team and taught the baby to sleep on his chest and designed buildings that won awards. Nia ran the business side with the same fierce competence she'd brought to her first promotion, balancing motherhood and partnership and the endless beautiful chaos of building a life. Sometimes, late at night, Nia would wake from dreams of falling. The crash still lived in her bones, in the crack of her ribs that ached before rain, in the scar tissue that marked where her old life ended. Graham would wake with her, hold her through the fear, remind her they'd survived. We're surviving. Would keep surviving together. And in the morning, they'd return to the work of building. A house, a company, a family. A life that honored the second chance they'd been given by making something worth the cost. Zara started 4th grade calling Graham Dad and teaching her baby brother to dance. The house was completed, every room exactly as they'd imagined. The company opened a second office. 3 years after the crash, on the anniversary, they returned to the forest. Not where the jet had gone down, that was still too raw, but to the wilderness where Graham had proposed. They built a fire, taught Zara and little Marcus how to identify edible plants, slept under the stars as a family. "I used to hate this," Nia said, watching the flames. "Being out here. It reminded me of almost dying. And now? Now it reminds me of why I survived, of what I was fighting to get back to." She looked at her family, Graham and Zara and Marcus, all safe and warm in hers. "This, all of this." Graham kissed her temple, held her close. Around them the forest whispered with night sounds, no longer threatening but peaceful. The panther that had stalked them was a memory. The crash was history. What remained was the life they'd built from the wreckage. Imperfect, complicated, beautiful beyond measure. They'd fallen out of the sky together, and somehow, impossibly, they'd learned to fly.